This is going to blow your mind. Imagine if everything you know about the years 614 to 911 CE was an elaborate fiction, a conspiracy so massive that it added phantom centuries to our calendars and textbooks. According to the phantom time hypothesis, Charlemagne never existed, the early Middle Ages were fabricated, and we're actually living in the year 1728, not 2025. What's truly mind-bending isn't just the audacity of this claim, but the strange documentary gaps, architectural anomalies, and calendar inconsistencies that have convinced some researchers that we're all unwitting participants in history's greatest deception. It challenges everything we have been taught to believe about the past. Could it be that we are living in a grand delusion, a world where the past is not what it seems? Let's delve deeper into this intriguing and unsettling possibility. This brings us to the phantom time hypothesis, a controversial theory that claims just that. 300 years of our history, the period from 614 AD to 911 AD, were artificially added to the timeline. Proposed by German historian Herbert Illig in 1991, the hypothesis suggests that this period is a phantom, a fabrication orchestrated by powerful forces for reasons unknown. According to Illig and his supporters, this period, often referred to as the Dark Ages, is shrouded in mystery and contradictions that cannot be explained by conventional historical understanding. They argue that the evidence for this period is scant, unreliable, and often contradictory, suggesting that it was fabricated to legitimize certain political and religious agendas. While the idea might seem preposterous at first glance, the proponents of the phantom time hypothesis point to several inconsistencies in the historical record that they believe lend credence to their theory. They highlight discrepancies in the archaeological evidence, such as the lack of significant architectural developments during this period. Additionally, they point to the sudden appearance of certain technologies and cultural shifts that seem out of place. Critics, however, argue that these inconsistencies can be explained by gaps in our current knowledge and the natural progression of history. Despite the skepticism, the phantom time hypothesis continues to intrigue and provoke debate among historians and enthusiasts alike. Whether you believe in this theory or not, it certainly challenges us to think critically about the way we understand our past. One of the most startling implications of the phantom time hypothesis is the potential non-existence of Charlemagne, the legendary king of the Franks, often credited with uniting much of Western Europe during the early Middle Ages. This iconic figure, a cornerstone of European history, may be nothing more than a product of historical fabrication, a fictional character invented to fill the void of the phantom years. If the phantom time hypothesis holds true, Charlemagne's reign, his conquests, his entire legacy would be nothing more than an elaborate fabrication. The evidence for his existence, including chronicles, biographies, and even physical artifacts attributed to his reign, would have to be re-examined and potentially dismissed as forgeries or misinterpretations. While the idea of Charlemagne as a fictional character might seem outlandish, the phantom time hypothesis raises valid questions about the reliability of historical sources and the potential for manipulation of the past. If the phantom time hypothesis is to be believed and those missing 300 years are indeed a fabrication, then our current understanding of the year is fundamentally flawed. We are not living in the 21st century, but rather closer to the 18th century. This means that everything we thought we knew about the chronology of events, the rise and fall of empires, the development of art, science, and culture, would need to be recalibrated. Imagine the social, cultural, and scientific upheaval if we were to suddenly discover that our calendar was off by 3 centuries. While the phantom time hypothesis remains a fringe theory, the questions it raises about the accuracy of our historical timeline and the possibility of large-scale historical manipulation are both intriguing and unsettling. Section 5. Section 5. The curious case of the missing documents. One of the primary pieces of evidence cited by proponents of the phantom time hypothesis is the curious lack of historical documentation from the period in question. This hypothesis suggests that a significant chunk of history, specifically the years between 614 AD and 911 AD, was either lost or never existed. They argue that, compared to other periods of similar length, the years between 614 AD and 900 11 AD are strikingly devoid of primary sources. This absence is particularly noticeable when we consider the wealth of documentation available from both earlier and later periods. However, proponents of the phantom time hypothesis believe that the scarcity of documentation is too significant to be explained away by these factors alone. They suggest that the lack of records is not merely a result of poor preservation or historical oversight. They point to the fact that other periods, even those characterized by widespread upheaval and societal collapse, have yielded a far greater volume of primary sources. For instance, the Dark Ages, often considered a time of great turmoil, still produced numerous documents and artifacts. This discrepancy, they argue, suggests that the period in question may not have existed at all, and the lack of documentation is simply a reflection of this fabricated timeline. The hypothesis posits that this period was inserted into history for various reasons, possibly political or religious. Other forms of historical evidence, such as archaeological findings and scientific dating methods, can help shed light on this enigmatic period. These methods provide a more tangible connection to the past, offering clues that written records alone cannot. By examining artifacts and using advanced dating techniques, researchers hope to either confirm or debunk the phantom time hypothesis. Section 6. Architectural anachronisms. Structures out of time. Another piece of evidence often cited in support of the phantom time hypothesis is the existence of what are perceived to be architectural anachronisms, buildings and structures that seem to belong to a later period than the one in which they were supposedly built. These structures often exhibit advanced techniques and styles that appear out of place for their time, raising questions about the accuracy of our historical timeline. Proponents of the hypothesis point to certain architectural styles, building techniques, and decorative motifs that seem to appear abruptly in the historical record, without any clear precedent in the preceding centuries. These sudden appearances of advanced architectural elements suggest that there might be gaps or even deliberate alterations in our historical records. They argue that these anachronisms suggest a discontinuity in the historical timeline, a point where the fabricated past was clumsily stitched together with the real one. This theory posits that certain periods of history were either invented or significantly altered, leading to these architectural inconsistencies. While the architectural evidence may not provide conclusive proof for or against the phantom time hypothesis, it does offer a fascinating lens through which to examine our past. It does raise some interesting questions about the evolution of architectural styles and the processes that drive these changes over time, and the possibility of missing links in our understanding of architectural history. Could it be that our historical timeline is not as linear and continuous as we believe? These architectural anomalies invite us to reconsider and delve deeper into the mysteries of our past. Section 7. Calendrical conundrums. Time's twisted path. The phantom time hypothesis also draws upon perceived inconsistencies and anomalies within historical calendars as further evidence for its claims. Proponents point to discrepancies between various dating systems, errors in chronological calculations, and the seemingly arbitrary adoption of certain calendar reforms as evidence of a deliberate attempt to manipulate the timeline. For example, they point to the transition from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar in the 16th century, arguing that the discrepancy between the two systems could have been used to conceal the phantom years. While it is true that calendars have been subject to numerous reforms and adjustments throughout history, these changes were typically made to align the calendar more closely with astronomical observations or to address practical concerns. Section 8. The implications of a fabricated past. If the phantom time hypothesis were true, the implications would be nothing short of earth-shattering. It would mean that our understanding of history is fundamentally flawed, that the past is not what we thought it was, and that we have been living in a carefully constructed illusion for centuries. The social, cultural, and political ramifications of such a discovery are difficult to fathom. Imagine a world where the history books were rewritten, where the heroes and villains of the past were revealed to be figments of imagination, and where the entire chronology of human civilization was shifted by 3 centuries. Section 9. Are we trapped in a grand illusion? The phantom time hypothesis, while intriguing and thought-provoking, remains a highly speculative theory. The evidence presented by its proponents is largely circumstantial, based on perceived anomalies and inconsistencies that can be explained by more conventional historical interpretations. While there is no denying that history is often written by the victors, and that the past is subject to interpretation and manipulation, the idea that such a grand deception could be successfully carried out over centuries, spanning multiple cultures and continents, seems highly improbable. It encourages us to question our assumptions, to critically examine the evidence, and to remain open to the possibility that our understanding of the past is always evolving as new discoveries come to light.